Welcome back to the Blue Collar Trade Show, where real people share real stories about building, fixing, leading, and living with purpose. I'm Troy, and I'm here with the crew, Chad, Jim, Marissa. Each week we dig into lessons, have laughs, and hard-won wisdom from the folks who keep America running. Let's get into it. Well, yeah, let's get into it then. So welcome to the Blue Collar Trade Show, Mr. Jamie Gerdsen. It's a pleasure to have you. Ooh, Jim. Hey. All right, here we go.
Nice.
All right, so Jim has a new computer, so we're hoping that works fine. Marissa got her microphone figured out, so I think we're in pretty good shape. And you've been on podcasts before, so this is a pretty big deal. So then we're going to take a twist. So Jamie, you said you did your research on us, so what questions do you have for us? I'm just
What do you like best about us?
So here's what I'd love to know, right? So total episodes you've done, I think we're like 22 or 26, or maybe I'm off there. I don't know. Total number of episodes you guys have done. All right. So of the 22, give me like the top 3 themes that you've learned that you want to share.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Jim?
Man, there's been quite a few things. One of the really cool things, we've had a couple of women guests on, and getting their perspective on the trades. I mean, one of them is the general manager of a air conditioning company, and to get their perspective on leadership and things like that, I think we're very interested, because there's, in the trades, it's more and more common to see females in the trades, and especially in leadership positions. And I think that's great for the trades and great for everybody. So it was neat to get their perspective. That's probably my biggest takeaway.
The welder.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's probably doing scuba diving welding right now. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
Probably.
Marissa, what was your favorite?
I definitely was with the Varsity Zone and that episode for sure. And I think it's just, everyone thinks it's so easy, or I feel like a lot of techs, they think, I've been doing this for 20 years and they can just open up their own company. And there's just so much more, I think, in different sides of everything in order to be successful, that they think it's just, I'm going to open it and that's it. I know how to do plumbing. I can make my own company, but really they don't succeed, or they go back to working for someone because they don't realize all the time and effort and just the other side of the business.
It's really funny you say that, because I talk about that with my wife and kids all the time. And
you're always working.
But it's because it is most people that think, oh, he owns his own company, he must be rich, right? Most people walk around thinking about that, and they don't realize that running your own company, most of them aren't very rich, right? How hard that is. And when I see a store or a restaurant or a business close, my heart breaks, because I know they didn't close the very minute things went south. They usually hung on for 6 months or a year too long and lost their, family fortune in some sense. And, so it's a lot harder than people think. To answer your question, I've gotten so much out of every call, right? Everybody has a very interesting background. Everybody kind of has come into it for different reasons. So the people you talked about, Jim, but also we had a couple call centers come on, we had a couple PR firms come on. We had a couple people that do, kind of a raving fan thing. That was pretty fun, right? So I don't know. It's just been, we're doing this not only to promote our business, but, and to promote others who come on, but it's just been fascinating to hear everybody's spin on this. And AI, we talk about a lot. We keep saying we're going to talk about Bigfoot, Jamie, but we never really do. So if you want to start there, we certainly can. How about you? So if you've watched anything, what have you learned so far? What do you like?
Well, I think what's interesting, right, is there's lots of different ways to get to success, right? When you look at stuff, right? And I think, we have elevated the trades for lots of different reasons, whether it's data centers and sort of the build out. And so everybody's talking about how we're short on people. I can tell you stories. I mean, I'm a 3rd generation HVAC guy. My grandfather started something in 31. I worked for my dad for about 3 weeks, and then he fired me, and I went and worked in the technology sector. And then 5 years later, I came back and worked for him again, right? And we had a great 25-year run, best friend. bought the business from him, and I could talk about more of that. But we would always talk about his dad. He would talk about his dad in 1950 wouldn't order heat in his trucks because he didn't want guys sleeping on the job site. And that's like the Leave It to Beaver, like perfect world, right? And so fast forward, here we are. What is that? 66 years ago, right? And the more things change, more they stay the same, right? It's still one call, one tech, one job site, one guy doing this or one gal doing that. And there's a lot of great news that I think people don't share, right? So when I listen to podcasts like you guys, what's great about it is it's real stories from real people doing real work, right? And so I think when you kind of look at it, you talk about women in the trades, right? I don't know why it took so long to realize that there's huge value quotient in having diversity in your workforce, but somebody must have missed the memo, because I can tell you that the women I hired in leadership roles usually, unfortunately, would perform at a level that was a lot different than their counterparts. And we saw a lot of positive things as a result in the businesses that we ran. And I just never got why it was like an epiphany that we should have women in the trades, right? I mean, my grandma, right? She was in the trades. She was in the accounting side. I mean, that was like 1931, and that started because they couldn't find a job, right? Like most entrepreneurial seizures, you freak out. You're like, I'm going to start a business. The next thing you know, you don't see your family, because I don't know about you, but how do you grow a business unless you're working it every day, 7 days a week? I mean, it's and I think people think that it's like, for you, Troy, people probably say, man, he makes it look easy. That's because you're working 12, 16 hours a day, making it look easy because you're working on it every day. Right.
But you have to enjoy it too. Then it doesn't seem so hard. Right.
That's right.
So you're right. Nothing has changed that much. It's still a human connection, as much as we want to make fancy it up with all the technology. At the end of the day, like you said, the phone has to ring. Somebody has to run a call, pick up the phone, answer it, book a call, somebody has to do something. Right. So yeah, it's fascinating. It's really cool. And so just looking at your background a little bit, Jim and I were talking about it. So we've been around this world in a lot of different ways for a lot of years. Sure. Cross paths, probably, don't know for sure, but more than likely, I mean, you've been a part of just about everything, right? And so have we. So what stuck out to me was, I always like to tell people, it was just by accident, right? That I kind of became a salesperson. I don't even know if I'm a very good one, but it's all I've ever really done. Right. And that was the first thing I did in the HVAC space. Now, you wouldn't want me fixing your air conditioner, but I could sell you one if you wanted one.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's where you started too, sort of, right?
The comfort advisor role in the residential side, right? So our business was, generally we had been in new construction, we had been in spec, commercial, light commercial. What we found is that residential as a model, we found to be more profitable. It was, you were dealing directly with the customer, you had higher margins. And so, my first real role was being a comfort advisor, right? The business, had 20 people, and you go out and you'd sell a job. And what was amazing to me, and when I talked to other people who were sales guys, they had to farm for their own leads. And I'm like, well, wait, wow, this is amazing. Like, you get all your own leads and everybody's going to buy. Right? They're either buying from you or somebody else, typically in the first 72 hours. Right. And so the idea that you could go out and you could actually help get a solution to somebody and they would pay you for that, right? Was pretty awe-inspiring, right? Especially when you're in your 20s. And inevitably as a sales guy, you make a lot of mistakes on jobs, right? You short material here or there. And so you start to realize the guys doing the work, not you, are probably the ones that you really got to cater to and make sure that you're a good customer to them first, and then a good customer to the customer itself. So kind of fun time. So
I remember so John O'Connor, who was the owner of the company, was a third generation business from the early 1900s, literally, came in, salesperson. And I remember him saying, you can make $100,000 a year. All the leads are provided, and 90% of the people buy. And I'm like, and coming from a world where I was cold calling every day for 4 or 5 hours, and just like, sign me up all day long. Right. Yep. It was a beautiful thing, but it turns out 90% of the people did buy. They just didn't always buy from me. That was the trick that I didn't know at the time, but I'm still convinced that they should have. So do you feel that way? Do you ever, what do you think about more, the deals you got or the deals you didn't get back in those days?
I mean, I started to look at, I would really think long and hard about why you didn't get a sale, right? So I would spend way more time trying to understand why I lost the sale than why I got the sale. And so, I was pretty systematic about it, right? Like I had like a 7-step process I created and would follow up, right? Handwritten notes to people right when you leave the home. I was listening to Zig Ziglar. A lot of people don't even know who that guy is, right? But I would listen to like sales tapes, and like I would practice in the mirror about overcoming objections, right? And I think, at the time, my spouse didn't want to talk about, like, I'd be like, all right, tell me that I'm too expensive. And so I would want to like go through that process.
You're ugly.
And there were times where you're just like, there were some calls I guess how I always found amazing is, and I say this in a nice way, but I would walk into houses and I could not believe the way people lived. Some of them lived like really interesting. Some of the stuff was like, you're like, I can't actually believe that I'm sitting here in a house with like 20 people, and this guy's just smoked 2 packs of cigarettes with me while I'm trying to sell him a furnace. And as soon as I told him the price, he like keeps smoking even more, right?
Well, he's nervous. Yeah.
Or you go down in the basement and they got a dog in the basement that hasn't been outside and God knows how long, and you're walking through landmines, right? I mean, those kind of stories in the residential world are pretty humbling.
They're pretty fun. Funny you say Zig Ziglar. I remember sitting there watching or listening to cassette tapes. Marissa, do you know what that is? You ever heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So cassette tapes. Well, I had memorized so many things. Zig Ziglar and the Tech Daddy. Remember Tech Daddy, Charlie Greer?
Daddy.
Oh, dude, I got a story about that.
He was the best.
So I might have
Charlie Greer.
So Charlie Greer. So I won this thing called Comfort Tech Idol at Comfort Tech. It was the first time he did it. But when I started like working for my dad, I was a sales guy, and look, I was the son of the boss, right? So the SOB, everybody wanted me to fail. So I'm like, man, I got to get some training. So I go to Charlie Greer, and the first day you show up, there's like 12 people in this small conference room in Fort Myers, Florida. And needless to say, I'd sold a few jobs, right? Started in October. I think went to see him in November. But man, the first time first day, he's like, get in front of the video camera and sell me. Like this whole like sell me the pen thing, or like try to close me. And I've effed it up so bad. He literally said to me, he said, you are the single worst salesperson I've ever met. This is ridiculous. You are so bad. You should literally leave my class.
There's a vote of confidence.
He said that in front of you in front of everybody?
Oh, in front of everybody on video camera. He just ripped my ass. And it was but it was good. It was good medicine, right? You're like, and then you have to write down the 45 reasons to buy from you, right? So that was part of the homework. It was an intense class, man. So
so we could talk about sales all day, and I know you've gone beyond that. And so I guess not really. I mean, if you're a sales guy, well, we're all trying to sell something, right? So, but do you think this? I'm going to age myself again because we all, So we're just talking about Blockbuster Video a few minutes ago.
They don't. Aging is actually, you should view it as like great wine. You can't drink great wine overnight, man. It takes
that's true. Good point. There you go. All right, but do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what. That I'm in great shape right now. Then,
yeah, you're like
man,
vintage.
The best.
Salespeople. So there's salespeople, and then there's salespeople, and then there's clerks. Do you think the way we learn how to sell back in the days is still done today? Is it how different is it today?
I have a different view.
Either you can do it, and you can do it. You're going to stand in front of the mirror today, just like you did 30 years ago. Do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think today people are extremely resource flush. In other words, I was driving a car that didn't always start in a customer's driveway, right? I had a mortgage. I had a wife, just had a baby. We had some fancy mortgage so we could pay literally no interest at all because I couldn't afford what we were doing. I was making $500 a week draw against commission. So if I didn't sell, it really didn't matter. So where I would say is, do I think it's the same? I would say if the hungrier you are, you will do just about whatever it takes, and look, I was always ethical, so I'm not going down that road. What I'm saying though is if you told me that to feed my family and to keep a roof over my head, that I had to figure out how to close you at a kitchen table and tell you why we were the best company for you. was going to figure that out. So I think part of it is like when you're really hungry, you'll figure it out, man. So do I think that, today salespeople, at least in the HVAC, plumbing, electrical business at the kitchen table, still a real deal? Do I think you got to know how to text better? Do I think you need to have different communication skills, better writing skills? Well, sure. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to be curious, ask the right questions, put the customer first, put your company first and your employee first, and then you'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Because authenticity at the end of it, Troy, like authenticity sells. If you're real and you go into somebody and you say, hey, look, like here's the 3 options. I really think that based on your budget and your situation, this option is the best and it's not the most expensive. Now, the downside of this option is that warranties are less, your efficiency is a little less. But if from a cash flow standpoint, this is probably better for you, is a much better situation. So I don't know the answer because I'm not 20 anymore. I wish I was. Marissa, I wish I was as young as you. I wish I could go back. But when I look at the guys do well in the business, they're tenacious, they learn, they're curious, they ask good questions, they follow up, they do what they say what they do. So to me, I don't know. I mean, I'd flip it back to you. Do you think it's really all that different today?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's the same thing, right? So I got into it, same thing, had little kids, had a mortgage, had no money, I couldn't park in the driveway for the same reasons, but it was not because it wouldn't start, because it would leak oil on their driveway. So I wanted to park it on the street, right? So, and I figured out, I took bits and pieces of what lots of people do, like Ziegler and Greer and all that, and made it my own, right? But it came down to not being the smartest guy, but being genuine with them, and just letting people buy from who they like and trust, and that's kind of it, right? If they like and trust you and they feel like it's a decent value, it doesn't have to be the cheapest. It just they have to trust that you're getting something good. Doesn't matter what it is, right? And you'll take care of them. So do I think it's changed? I don't think it's changed. I just get frustrated with the lack of, it seems like the lack of effort that some people put into
that's I think that's part of it. I think that back in the day, I don't want to say that we were hungrier, but it was, eat what you kill kind of thing. And, a lot of, my first sales job, it was commission. I was on commission. That was it. So you had to sell. That's right. And you don't see that anymore. Now most of them are, you get a paycheck plus your commission. The other, what do you think, Jamie, just kind of to jump around just for a second?
Sure. The only problem is you're going to have to,
muted your microphone.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Push buttons.
But there's a lot of these things now where you buy your AC unit online.
Yep. And
then somebody comes and puts it in. I mean, I don't see that as a threat because it's been around a while, and I don't think it's done very well at all, because people still want that personal interaction. But how do you feel about that and what it's doing to the industry, if you will?
So, all right. So like 15 years ago when the internet, or 20 years ago when Al Gore invented the internet, right? I was like, you know what? We were trying to figure out how to get more leads without spending more marketing dollars. And I'm like, all right, we're going to create an online portal that any customer can go on to create a proposal. And the idea was, I didn't care how they bought or who they bought from. I just wanted our name to be at the kitchen table for anybody in the greater Cincinnati where the business was, right? And we created tons of proposals, right? So then we said, well, man, this is amazing. We're going to hire a guy, right? Because it's the internet side, right? And that guy could close like 3% of those leads, right? So here's what I know. I know that the way consumers buy today, well, this is a little caveat. So you've used Instacart, right? And prior to Instacart, there was Amazon, and nobody thought there was any room for somebody like Instacart. And Instacart is flipping amazing, right? To the point where I have a cottage in the middle of nowhere in Canada, okay? And they will deliver Instacart to a marina that's an hour from town. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen, right? Now, on the HVAC side, do I think that you are making it harder or easy for the customer? I think that if you make it easy to buy, there are some customers who are DIY all day long. They're going to buy it. They're going to want to install it or hire Frank for $200. But if you look at all the customers today, even with large private equity owned conglomerates, nobody has 10 or 15% market share like nationwide. I mean, nobody like in the largest companies I know, like Parker and Sons or another company, these are all residential guys, right? Or Morris Jenkins out of North Carolina. Nobody's got more than 10 or 12% market share. So to me, if I was a contractor like out there trying to figure out, do both. Sell online, have an online portal, man, sell to the customer. How do you make it so easy for them to buy? And a lot of guys worry about margin erosion but they don't even job costs. So it's like you're so worried about margin erosion, but do you even know what your shit costs? I don't know. I don't mean to be feisty.
Right.
That's probably not the answer you wanted, but
I
don't think it matters, right? Because if it mattered so much, it would have taken off like wildfire, but it still hasn't, right?
Well, because even Amazon, like you said, they tried getting into the space, selling air conditioners just through their own system, and it hasn't really. They haven't been able to crack that code. So it still comes down to just the.
Well, look,
you have to be present and you have to be available, right?
From a guy doing $1 million top line to somebody who's doing $1 billion top line, what I can tell you is it's still 12 to 14 steps from when a customer calls you to when a tech checks the job out.
Yeah.
Right. You still have those steps. When I buy an air conditioner, the challenge with that from online perspective, it's not a plug and play like a refrigerator. So I think if you get to a place where, like as an example, as compressors get better, you'll buy one type unit and it'll go from 0 to 5 tons, right? And maybe it'll be quick connects and all that stuff. But again, look, make it easier to buy. That's the story, right?
So your family owned an air conditioning company, and did you always know you were going to work there? Did you kind of grow up playing baseball, little league, going, I can't wait to work for my dad, or how did all that kind of come to be?
Yeah, so growing up, right? I mean, I like everybody else, I worked in a warehouse, and I drove a truck and drank Mountain Dew and delivered parts and stuff. But I
love Mountain Dew.
Oh, hate it. You don't like Coke?
Oh my God!
I can't drink Mountain Dew anymore, but I loved it then. Man,
it was great.
I did too.
So good. Driving around the truck.
So damn sweet.
Yeah, so fantastic.
Well,
I was a parts driver. I was a pretty serious athlete in high school and went to a Division I school on a scholarship. So like I was really focused on athletics at the time, right? I did it. And so when I graduated from college, my dad and I were close and I wanted to work with him, right? And so I went back to Cincinnati and started working with him. And he was like, you can't work here because I'm not going to let you do that right out of college. Like, you need to go work for somebody else. So I went to go work for somebody else. I didn't really think long and hard about it. But then you get married and you have a kid and you say, hey, like working in a business with family could be kind of fun. So I called my dad and said, hey, would you consider us working together? And he said, no. So then I called later. I called him back and I said, how about now?
Who is this?
Right?
Who is this? Yeah.
How about now? He's like, and so it's funny, you're in this. At the time we had taken a company public. I was one of the first 70 employees. It sounds exciting, but we were a .bomb, not a .com. So after we went public, it got really serious and it was different. So I wanted to go back and move back to Cincinnati. So I did that. And I interviewed with lots of places. And I remember sitting down with my dad over a cup of coffee when I was in town interviewing with folks. And I just said, hey man, I just want to work with you. I don't care what I do. So if that means, that means selling stuff, it means answering the phone, whatever. He's like, well, I'm still doing this thing called Apollo, which is this heating and air conditioning company. You could be a sales guy. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that pay? He said, nothing unless you sell something. I said, this is awesome. I'm totally in. I said, do you think you could help me relocate? He said, sure. I can give you U-Haul's phone number and you can move all your own shit. So,
man, he's a good
I
dad.
go back to my wife at
There's
the time.
some motivation.
Doing everything I wanted to do. Yeah.
I mean, I was so excited. I went back to my wife and told her I got a job where I get no pay on a weekly basis, unlimited leads, and we get to drive a U-Haul across the country. She was so excited. She went back to Cincinnati herself and got a job 2 weeks later. So, and the rest is sort of history. But I mean,
that's awesome.
I did that sales job for probably 7 years. And when I wanted to stop doing it, my dad was like, well, you can stop, but you're going to have to replace your revenue. So then you were forced to figure out how to train other sales guys, right?
Yeah. Which is even harder, honestly, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's harder and it's really predictable to your point, right? I mean, people become pretty predictable. But then, I bought the business from him in 2009, and then we started to grow it, and we cracked the lead and lever code, as I call it, right? Which was, it's the fight of the three bears in the HVAC business, plumbing, electrical business, right? Too much, too little, just right. Either too many guys, not enough jobs, too many jobs, not enough guys. And, the one thing you always got to figure out is how do you crack the code to have enough guys when you have calls and enough calls when you have guys, right? And if you can do that, you're going to grow a real successful business.
Have you cracked that code? Is that what you're going to share with us next? Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
I
mean, we figured out. What's that?
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, we really figured out. I mean, we started an apprenticeship program back in 2012, right? We joined Nexstar, which was a trade organization.
Yep.
I later became chairman of that. We went on to figure out how to over market and normalize spend as we accelerated. And so, we started to grow 40% a year, right? But I think my most proud moment in Apollo's chapter is, we licensed over 200 guys in a really short amount of time.
Wow.
And of the 200 guys, 12 of them went on to go start their own businesses, right? And that was the whole thing. Like, when you really got down to like the leads and labor deal is the paradox is you accelerate when you're already accelerating. Okay. In other words, if you have a lot of leads, get more.
Yeah.
Even if you're satisfying what you think you have, go harder. Because what happens is the operational guys who are managing those people doesn't want anybody to get less than 40 hours, man. Like, that's the worst thing ever is when you're a manager and the guy calls you and said, hey man, my wife, excuse me, is I only have 34 hours, man. And I need to get 36 to 38 to really be able to pay my rent. So what can you do? I mean, we used to have guys paint warehouses all the time in the slow months, right? So if you could figure out how to accelerate the leads, the operational managers got really confident that they would overhire. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because all of a sudden you can always find 3 to 4 more calls a day, right?
Well, that was the key, at least for us. And it's probably, you can counter it, but so we went heavy all the time. But back in, 30 years ago, they would say, all right, so you have your maintenance plans, you have all this stuff. But, once you get into the shoulder seasons, which never seem to end, that's when you scale back on your marketing, right? And it's just like, no, to me, that's when you double up. Right. And when it's the busiest, we even double up more. Now we're advertising on nights and weekends because no one else will. They're already overflow. So, so you take business from people who don't want it at those times, right?
Yeah. And I mean, look, we would have these apprenticeship classes that were 20 or 25 guys, knowing that only 12 and a half would make it through, right? Because we would try to fire half of them the first 2 weeks because it was like getting cut from the team. Like, look, I only have enough room, but I'm going to hire 25 of you, but I'm only going to actually have enough room for probably 13 to 15 of you. So the reality is, if you're late, if you show up, you smell like a cigarette, if your car's full of shit, if you don't know how to dress, you can't spell up on time, you can't do the work, we're going to cut you, period.
Yeah.
Because it's a meritocracy. Like, you don't just get to be here, you got to earn it. And that culture was pretty prevalent. And I think it helped drive some success for sure.
Sounds like you learned it from your dad.
Funny thing about my dad, one time, I would say to him, I think we should try to, I really tried to do like just a little better. He said, you should try harder. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to quantify this. Dad, I did today I got 1% more. He said, only 1%. I said, well, if you did that every day, it's more than 365% in a year. He's like, well, why not 2%? So it was always like that banter with him, man.
He always your still around. We want to have him on our show next week.
Absolutely.
Marissa, you had a question. I forgot to come back to you.
Sorry. No, yeah. I feel like you kind of answered some of it, but really I was going to ask, what it was that you did when you took it over from your dad that you were able to grow with, or just in general, like your advice for someone who wants to scale their business. Like, what do you think they should focus on and prioritize?
Yeah, I'll give you like just 3 quick approaches, right? The first one is when I took it over from my dad, we had a 70% turnover because I was the shittiest boss ever. It was
70%. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which means for anybody who's listening, right? That means that you can't hire enough to deal with the loss. Because I was the guy who would blame everybody for where we were. except myself. So I had this epiphany. I actually went to this entrepreneurial program in Boston and heard this guy talk, and it changed the whole identity of how I thought about the business. Right. And I wrote a 5-page document, almost like a Jerry Maguire moment. And 4 years later, we won the best place to work. And then we won 8 years in a row. And so the idea was we got really clear on the people side of the business. And, maybe unpopular or not, but employees were way more important to me than customers, because I never had $1 million customer. I had $1 million employee every year. Right. And we knew that if we could really feed their inner soul of like what they wanted to do with their life, not just at work, we could accelerate the business. And so that became like pure, like just platform. That was like the peer. That was like the most important foundational element of the whole thing. And I can give you a lot of detail about it, but the second thing would be is, part of when I really thought about the business was how many times can we serve a customer in a year? So if we were just heating and air, it was like twice a year, right? But if we added plumbing, well, there was like drain clearing, right? There was toilets, faucets, and all that. And then electric came along, and then we added handyman service. And the way we added them is I called customers and said, if we were going to add 3 services, what would you want first? Who would you buy from? And then we hired a plumber, and then we had enough calls. We hired 2 more plumbers, right? It's not like we went out and bought a company, right? Same thing with electric. And then handyman services, we started that too. And it was all about trying to get share of wallet. So really trying to figure out, how do you get more visits or more touches with your customer? And then I think that the final one was, I think you have to have the faith that the risk you're taking is worth it. So in other words, you need to lean in. We talked about this earlier. You should lean in instead of lean away when things are tough, right? You should continually learn as a leader. I think a lot of guys, I try to read 50 books a year, right? And I've done that for a long time. And there's all these other things you can do, which, are not original ideas, but the execution of it is just super, super important. And so I think part of that execution is, and I'm not saying that pay matters, but you got to give the people that work for you the opportunity they can't get anywhere else, which means they have to believe they can make more money and have more success holistically at your business than they can anywhere else. You have to design the platform to work that way, which means you have to be willing to sort of eat last on the platform, right? Too many owners sometimes, I've been blessed to go out and be part of organizations where we go buy other businesses. And I'm always surprised at the lack of fertilizer people put back into their business, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Like you can't, I think it's great. You want to buy a boat and a fancy car, or you want to have an air, all that shit's great. But like, if you can't make it so your people have affordability and can do great things and make a ton of money doing what they're doing with you and have great learnings and experiences, you're probably not the right business, man. You got to give way more than you take. So that would be my 3 things.
How do you think? So you mentioned a tier 1, division 1 athlete. So what sport were you in?
I did a sport where you do the same motion over and over again called rowing. I wasn't very gifted athletically in terms of catching balls, but I could pull on an oar pretty hard. So
really interesting. Yeah. I was not. I was curious. I wasn't guessing rowing. Jim, did you know it was going to be rowing?
I had absolutely no idea. Rowing was about 3 different things came to mind, and rowing. You might as well have said archery, because
that's pretty cool. Yeah. What's that movie? That famous movie, The Men in the Boat, or what is it called?
Yeah, Boys in the Boat, man.
Boys in the Boat. Great movie.
Great book. Okay, so but I think, and I'm a big believer. I love sports. Same as most people. But I think that being in sports as a young lad, shapes you as an adult.
For sure.
Dealing with people, dealing with adversity, dealing with those kinds of things. How much do you ever look back and go that if I didn't do that, some of this wouldn't have happened?
Yeah, look, what's interesting about rowing is you can only go as fast as the person in front of you. Right. Yeah. So unless the 8 of you really row in unison, right, it's very hard. So there's this concept I used to think about, push pull, right? So like if you're trying to push the boat, right, really trying to push it, what ends up happening is it goes really slow, just because you're not in sync, you're not clicking along. But if you're trying to pull, right, and everyone's pulling together in a synchronous way, it becomes incredibly quiet. It's not loud. It's very, it's like perfection. It's called swing, right? And it's almost like you're going really fast, and the harder you pull, the faster you go. And you can just feel it. It's one of probably the most I think I rode competitively for 12 years. I probably remember 4 times where it was perfect.
I was going to say, how often did that happen? So it's total silence and everything, and you're moving as fast as it can go.
It's and some people call it the zone. It's the swing of it all. And I think when I thought about the reality of what's transportable from that vision was that the people that I worked with, we had the wrong people in the wrong seats a lot, actually. And then all of a sudden you start to figure out where to put people in the boat, and the boat starts to move a little bit faster, and you start trading out some players, and then you start moving faster and faster. And
Interesting.
I think what the biggest interesting thing was to me is that when the work got boring, that was when I knew we were rowing well.
Yeah.
It got boring.
Well,
right?
That's interesting though. That's the hard part though, because when the guy in front of you, he's cool and he drinks a lot of beer and he's funny, right? But he's not a very good rower. What do you do with him?
You get them to move on. I mean, I think I'm not in the business of motivating people. I was in the business to help an execute plan, right?
Yeah.
And if you couldn't show up early and stay late, and that wasn't your gig, that was okay, right? But there was no way we were going to go from 2 million to 1 billion over the course of time, unless you had people who were willing to do stuff that others couldn't or wouldn't.
Right.
I don't know. It sounds all like, I don't know. It sounds pretty normal now in some ways, I guess, because people talk a lot of this kind of stuff. But, I think people underestimate that hard work is still the number one deal. And it's the compounding effect of that hard work every day. So like when I say we were really, I was a competitive rower. Well, yeah, because we trained 10 to 11 months a year, 2 to 3 hours a day. We were lucky enough to win some national championship stuff, but it's because we showed up every single day, 6 days a week, right?
Yeah.
And you put 3 hours a day in, and you did it when it was cold and rainy and shitty and all that stuff. And works the same way, man.
So so you've done a lot of stuff, right? And we could spend all day talking about it, but it's very impressive, all the different things. So, but just the first thing, so you went and you took over your dad's business, and all of that went well, and obviously you grew the business. But there's a time where you decided to what?
It didn't really all go well. I mean, there were some fucking nasty
ultimately.
I mean, I'll tell you a horrible story. This is a good one. So when we transitioned to Service Titan, right? Service Titan's a great program.
Why?
This is not so long ago, right? It's 2016, maybe 2017.
Yeah.
We had screwed up, and for some reason, the integration, we didn't do billing codes right on our memberships, and I had the wrong guy running the integration. And we get to the end of the year, we're a C Corp, so we would always bonus out profit to reduce taxes. And so we over bonus. Like I thought we had this much and we didn't. So we walk into January 1, right, with like 60 grand in cash and an 80 grand payroll. And you're like, holy shit, like how the fuck did we get here? Excuse my language. So then you wake up and you realize that you've been managing the business off cash flow for like the last 6 months because you couldn't get a P&L, and that was stupid, but you were trying to be understanding because the guy said he was working really hard, and he was working really hard, and he effed you up pretty bad. So then come January, you're like, holy shit, man. Like I drove really fast to work, and I got there really early in the morning for 6 weeks, and we cut $1 million of overhead out of the business without letting one person go, and we made it through. And so my point to you is like, yeah, there were some great times and I enjoyed all of them, but there was some dark, nasty shit too, right? You just don't talk about it.
There's no way. There's never been a business ever. If it has, they're just blessed by God, but that doesn't
they're lying.
Some of that gyration, right? Because that's the whole point. But there comes a point where some just like, this sucks. I want out, right? Or there comes a point where, hey, people keep begging me to sell it. So how did all that come to be? When did you decide, all right, let's move on to something different?
Well, so we were growing really fast, and this was 2019. I mean, we were growing 40% a year, and we just bought a $6 million facility. I say I bought a $6 million facility. So I was the only shareholder. We had no debt. And we were doing about, 27 to 30 million a year in top line. Okay. We were putting 20 to 25% on the bottom line. So it was a pretty healthy business. The challenge was that we had not in the previous years put that much cash to the bottom line. And so all of a sudden we had really high growth, right? We needed 50 trucks a year. We just bought this large facility. We need much more cash creation to fuel the growth, right? Because it's one thing when you go from 15 to 20, 25, 20 to 30, right? And so all of a sudden you're like, well, shit, I'm going to have a cash crunch where I think we're going to run into some issues where we're not going to have the cash enough to fuel the trucks, the inventory, the taxes. We're going to need more cash reserves, right? And so we hired an investment banker because I thought local banks were really restrictive, right? They wanted everything and more to be able to get a credit line. And so I said, let's rethink this. Let's go out and get an investment banker and find alternative financing. And so we went to market in really late 19, early 20. Actually it was like early 20, and it had nothing to do with the fact that I wanted to sell the business. I didn't want to sell the business at all, right? But when we got to market, we got 40 indications of interest and about 15 LOIs, and they were really, really, really meaty. And when I mean meaty, they were big numbers. And I remember looking at my dad saying, holy shit, man, is this like actually happening? He's like, yeah, man. He's like, I sold the business and I designed it to sell, and you should sell too. I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, we've built something really impressive. But when you start talking about decades in advance, right? Because that's what a multiple is. It's, every time you hear like I got a 2X or a 4X, well, it's 4 years in advance of what you made a year. You kind of sit there and say, man, this is pretty impressive, right? So long story short, COVID hits, right? I'm driving to the office every day at 4:30 in the morning to make breakfast sandwiches for guys so I could see them before they went to work. I mean, we had a couple hundred employees, and I'm going through all this due diligence with all
400 sandwiches for your guys before work every day.
I'd make 40. I'd make 40 sandwiches. But then we added a coffee bar, which was a Keurig with an extension cord. And then in the spring, we added a blender with an extension cord too.
Pretty fancy. There you go.
Yeah, very fancy. But, we were visiting with all these guys. And I mean, one of the things I tell you is like the key learning is, I hired an industrial psychologist to interview the teams that I thought that I would go work with, because I wasn't going to, if I was going to sell the business, I wanted to continue to work. So part of it was, the company I ended up selling to, which was Turnpoint Services, I joined their executive team as a chief people officer and a chief performance officer. Now, for those who are not in the corporate speak, which I was not, I had no idea what a chief people officer actually was, which is really an HR guy. So I'm sure I come off like a wicked great HR person, and I can tell you,
super smooth,
professional HR people.
Wicked great.
Well, I can tell you, I remember the guy asking me like how I felt about it, and I'm like, I'm not an effing HR guy. Like, I don't know anything about HR. If you're talking about people and performance and how to do performance management and all the buzzwords, I don't know what that shit means. All I know is I know how to execute business. I know how to drive through people, right? Like, so anyway. And so we ended up selling in the fall of 2020. And then I went on to work with Turnpoint, for another 4 years. And I think over the course of the time went from about 300 million to about $1.4 billion in revenue. And I learned a ton. Like, I'm super grateful that I learned a lot. But more importantly, I think personally what I learned is I'm not a corporate guy. I'm too entrepreneurial. I enjoy Main Street much more than Wall Street. I think it's about job creation, career creation, community creation through those vehicles, not about manufacturing arbitrage, which is a fancy way of creating economics where maybe they don't exist.
I think that's awesome, right? So you fell into it, and honestly, you probably couldn't have sold it, because if you sold it a year later, it probably wouldn't have been the same. It was just because there was just that time. You don't know, maybe. Yeah. You didn't know at that time, right? So So just like, hey, take it, bird in hand. I like it, right? But what I really like of what you said, I like a couple things that you said here today. I wrote them down. I'm gonna steal them from you. You'll never know when I use them, but I'm gonna take some of the things.
Oh, I'll let you know, Jamie.
That's cool. That's cool. I appreciate it. I mean, if you want to give me, any kind of shout out, that'd be awesome.
But when you transition to, so you got this, you're on the board of this big company, but to become, then again, you go from entrepreneur to sponge.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And that's what I like. I've done that a couple of times too. Maybe not to the extent you did, but to become a sponge within a big executive team or a big company that's growing fast and you learn this, and then you kind of go back to, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to, a lot of responsibility without any real authority, right? You kind of, as an entrepreneur, you don't like that, right? So, okay, I learned everything I can from you guys. I'm going to go do something on my own, which is what happened next, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, so a couple things, right? Like, you go through this journey, we bought, I think 48 or 50 companies over that time. I was on almost every single one of those deals. I had a couple friends that were in the business. I convinced them to join Turnpoint. And look, I think overall, here's a couple key takeaways, right? Is that every one of those guys that sold their businesses, everyone walked away with incredible economics that they never would have had unless they'd grown the business, right? So the benefit to them was they made a ton of money, right? We all did. And you could have looked at it two ways. Okay, I'm going to make a ton of money. I'm going to stop. Or I'm going to make a ton of money. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all that resource, I'm going to bring it back to the table, and I'm going to go crush it in the market again because I'm going to be better economic, right? I'm going to be smarter. And guess what? I can't do what you on the private equity side of those guys do. I'm not a finance guy, but you know what I am? I'm an entrepreneur now that has a whole stable of cash.
Right.
So it's like giving somebody who can actually shoot a gun a lot of bullets, right? Like, and I don't need to be the biggest. I don't need to be the best, but I can tell you is that I'm still young, I'm still hungry, and I'm well financed. And guess what? We're going to take all the things that we created. We're going to go back to market, whether it's in HVAC, plumbing, and electric. That's not really the key. I mean, we started a thing that we wanted to create a 5th generation business called G5. And that whole idea was I wanted to create a family entity that was going to last.
That's what it means. That's very cool. All right.
That's it. That's it. And it was, to me, it's like a matchmaking business. I want to find great entrepreneurs that are a little scared to be entrepreneurs, right? So they want entrepreneurial training wheels, which means they need capital, but they're great operators, right? So let's go find a business that you want to run. And hopefully that's a service business because I get that. I like those businesses a lot, but it doesn't have to be an HVAC, plumbing, or electric. It could be something else, man. I mean, and I think that's the thing. The limiting factor, I think, before I sold a business was I couldn't figure out how to grow outside of Cincinnati. And now I'm like, well, that just doesn't seem very hard, right? Like we're going to hire some really smart people. We're going to take a little bit of risk. We'll set up shop in another country or another city, and then we'll support them, right? And we'll help them get through the same problems that all of us have every day, which are people-oriented issues, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's fun. And do I have like a chip on my shoulder about stuff? Well, no, I'm just competitive, right? I mean, I didn't share this with you, but like the rowing team I rowed with, we had 4 guys, I think, and we got to 12 guys, and we would drive around the country in a van with our boat on top of the van, and we would go race. We were like,
did you keep up with Kelsey?
What's that?
Did you keep up with that woman Kelsey who just rode from like somewhere in California to Hawaii?
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool stuff, isn't it? I think that's a little crazy, but
I know.
But I mean, I think that's the whole thing about like being entrepreneurial and sort of in the trades, man. It's like, I told my son who's 23, I said, if I were you, man, I would go get licensed in plumbing, electric, and heating and air.
Absolutely.
I would go to trade school. Like a dumbass, we all said we should go to college. So I paid for them all to go to college. And I went to college and I was a communications major. Like like same thing. Like, what are you going to do when you get out? I'm going to sell shit because nobody will hire me to do anything else. Right. But I look at it and those kids, I'm like, I would go to trade school, get licensed, learn a craft, spend the first 10 years of your life grinding on it, man. Because then you'll accelerate out in your 30s and your 40s, man. There's just too much good shit to do. Anyway, that's more than you asked. Sorry, I get excited about this whole stuff.
No, it's awesome, and it's really so. All right, so you made you exited Turnpoint, and then so how much time did you take? And did you just go stare at a tree in Canada for a year or so, or did you just turn it on and go?
Well, I got a sadder story. So my dad, my best friend, right, who's best man at my wedding, had a freak accident, fainted and whiplashed his neck and became a quadriplegic overnight. Like
oh my God.
Yeah. So he was a 80-year-old guy, 10,000 steps a day, Pilates 3 days a week, and he had an undiagnosed heart condition. He fainted and whiplashed his neck. And so at that time, he got airlifted to Lee Health down in Fort Myers. I flew down there and we took him up to Tampa General to get decompression surgery. And then I moved to Jacksonville for 9 months and lived in rehab and got him to walk again. So
really,
yeah. So the benefit, right, I always say is, I had the capital and the time, right? So like, God, I'm not a faith-based guy, but I will say that God does kind of give you a plan, even though you think you have one. And so I dedicated my time and my transition to my dad and saying, hey, look, man, like you're my best friend. There's no way you're not walking again. We're going to figure this out. And so we had really good doctors and sat sat in this place called Brooks Rehab in Jacksonville. Shout out to those guys. Unbelievable spinal cord recovery centers. And he started to walk again. And, he's not completely back to where he was, but he's certainly mobile. And then you figure out, like, if I'm going to do something, like, I don't want to be the operator anymore. You know what I want to do? I want to help people be operators by being an architect of great systems. And, look, for me personally, it was like the hardest thing in the world, because it was every day you're getting up at 5:00 in the morning to drive to the hospital. You're spending all day in the hospital. You're taking care of your mom. You're taking care of your sister. You're being like the heavy for everybody. And you're doing that 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. But I do it all over again in just a nanosecond.
Oh, absolutely.
Point, being with my family, having the resource to do it. So it all works out, man.
Mm-hmm.
It all works out.
I made fun of staring at a tree, so I'm actually, but that's a way better story, right? So,
well, it depends, right? It's a different story. I don't know if it's a better story, but yeah.
Well, no, but it's fascinating, right? So it just shows, and if you really think back, even to your dad, right? Who obviously smart guy, ambitious guy, healthy guy, and all those things probably are the reason why he's even getting around today, right? So just the drive and motivation and just, right, that's how he overcame it. So many people just wouldn't have even tried, right?
Yeah, so. I think the learning is like, what I would offer to all three of you guys is like, you start to figure out you can always learn stuff. Like, I didn't know how to like help a guy who couldn't walk, like get out of a wheelchair and actually like support him physically, or, how do you deal with health issues that come up? How do you do with a wound? If he's got a wound you got to deal with, if you're a caregiver. There was a ton of stuff, and now we've got a whole care system of care set up for him and all kinds of stuff. Same with my mom, but like, I had to learn all that shit on the fly, right? So the confidence when you have these crises come up and you get to like figure it out, it's kind of fun. I shouldn't say it like it's been fun, but it's certainly rewarding.
It could have been a lot worse. What would you do for this, Jim? Show me your finger.
What did you do?
Yeah, what would you do with that? You just cut it off.
What's your pain tolerance? I'd probably re-break that shit and try to set it straight.
It's been done 3 times. It's been reset 3 times.
You gotta have an even number.
Yeah.
If you think about it, though, and I know that they can. I'm going to say this, and I know that they'll cut it out. But the really cool thing about this, Jamie, is I can tell somebody to F off and get bent.
I was going to tell you. I was going to say, you do have like you have a definitely a patentable go F off deal. You've got you're around the corner. You got a crooked finger, man. You can see it a mile away.
That's right. It's like a periscope. You remember the periscope that you'd look around corners? That's what I can do with this.
In World War,
there's Captain Hook, and then there's Captain Crooked. That would be you, my friend.
Yeah, they had guns that could shoot around a corner, right? They had like a little way to do that. That's kind of the same thing. Flip somebody off around the corner.
So that was a table saw accident. So
yeah, that happens sometimes, man.
Yeah,
those saws move pretty quick. Yeah, I guess look, one of the questions I'd be really interested in, like we talked about, like the 3 things that you guys really enjoyed about the themes of your podcast. But if we did the same exercise, past, present, future, right? And we forwarded into the future. You guys have talked to a ton of really great people. It would be interesting if you've got a few minutes here. Tell me what you think where things are going. How, when you think about the trades, where do you think we are? Where do you think we're going? How would you think differently? I'd love to hear your all's thoughts about that stuff.
Can I jump on that real quick? So I've been in the trades for 28 years now. I retired from the Navy in 98 and went to work for a franchise company selling franchises, and it was all home services. And so I've been in the home service franchising mostly since then. And a couple of the things that I see, what I see happening is, first of all, in the past year, maybe 2 years, there's been a huge shift of sentiment towards the trades. And just this past year, CBS News did a thing, and they talked about how 40% or 48% of the high school graduates this past year were not going to college. They were going into the trades.
Mhm.
And they said it's a huge shift in that. And so what I see is the shift of not only the fact that more people are going into the trades, but the way the trades are perceived today
Mhm.
is so different than it was 10 years ago, because it's no longer, you can't go to college, that's why you're going into the trades. That's no longer what people are saying. They're saying, oh, really, you're going into the trades? That's a great option, because they're seeing, the kind of money that people are making. Mike Rowe was just talking on Fox News.
Yeah, I saw that.
He met a couple of electricians
Yep.
in Fort Worth working at a data center, making $260,000 a year.
Mhm.
And so it's the shift is just, I think, really cool to watch.
But it's a little bit of the shift back, sort of. But
Correct. Absolutely.
There's still some snobbery around it. I'm not going to
Sure.
pretend like there's not, right? There's people that they're not going to put it at equal footing, right? They never really did. So
They never will. Right.
Yeah. But it's only, and we know lots of people that are like, okay, you go to college or you can go to if you can't do that, then you can go join the military.
Join the military or go in the trades.
Right.
Yeah.
But what they don't know is, because it's like, if you don't work at IBM, you'll never be anybody, right? That's just kind of the corporate mindset. And it's like, it's just because, and I just shake my head, and my wife and I talk about it all the time. They just don't get it, right?
Right.
They don't get how many Jamie Gerdsens there are out there who've made way more money than he ever would have working for IBM, right? So,
or in communications.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a friend of mine who actually was a communication major, and he started a staffing firm at like 250 grand, and they grew it to $1 billion business. I mean,
oh wow.
What I would tell you is, when I think about trades today, how many
billion dollar friends do you have?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'm hanging out with the wrong people.
My best friends, I actually will tell you, I have a couple friends in Florida, and I have no idea actually what they do. I've never asked them. And they've been like best friends of mine for 10 years. We still talk about work, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, the long and short of it would be, what I think about the trades is that there's like the elements that you talk about. The three things that I think are interesting is that it's a tactile learner, right? So somebody who actually likes to learn with their hands, right? Which is very different. And that is not rewarded in school. The other thing is typically that because they're not rewarded and get their ass kicked a lot growing up, they're a lot more tenacious and tougher than people who do well in environments like school. And the final one is that, the bar, the perception is the bar for intelligence is low in the trades. And I would say maybe the bar is low for the type of intelligence people think matter. And what I mean by that is, I don't think the intelligence that you learn in school or college, or when you go to a top 5 business school in the country, or all that educational shit, actually doesn't equate dollar for dollar in its weight with success. It's just my 2 cents. Like, I think the people in the trades are way more tenacious, way smarter. They figure shit out, and it's really fun to watch because it's crazy how stuff.
But that's the thing; people don't get it until you're in it. Because do you know? Have you met anyone in your whole life that got into it in some way, shape, or form into the trades world that ever really left it?
No.
Not one person. I can't think of one person. It's and I'm not just making it up. I honestly can't think of one person.
It's a little addictive, actually. Like, I think about
there's so many layers to it that people just don't get.
Well, like, dude, so I still own the building where Apollo Home is in Cincinnati. And we, a couple weeks ago, had this horrific 1,000-year storm, and the building actually flooded. Got 5 feet of flood water in it. And it's not in a flood zone. It's the craziest thing to happen. But the next morning, man, I showed up with work boots on and gloves, and we just started remediating this 30,000 square foot building. Because they're still my buddies. Like, I look at those guys, I still like working with my hands, right? I still like getting into it, like fixing a crisis. Man, it's a blast, dude. It's addictive as shit. I love it. So anyway.
That's awesome. So what's next with G5? So what do you want? What's the, so you're how, where's it at? Where you want it? What's the vision for this?
Sure. I mean, look, we are constantly looking for operators and businesses. And so we are looking at it. We got a business in Sacramento we're looking at. We got another one in Fort Myers that we're looking at. We had a couple in Cincinnati we looked at. I'm extremely choosy. So I've probably looked at, I don't know, 250 different businesses in the last year. And by the end of the year, if we do 5 deals, I'll be really happy. Right. And so we've done some real estate stuff, which we like real estate, but that's more just like because it's fun, like fixing up houses and stuff. But in terms of finding the right operators, it's really a matchmaking deal. And so we're slow and steady. And we think, look, over the course of the next 5 years, we look to build a portfolio of around 15 to 20 different businesses that are, minority owned by operators that we employ that we help grow businesses. So, I mean, that's the plan.
That's nice.
It could flame out. It could be a horrible mistake. It could really get really shitty and just like burn out, or it'll work out great. It's going to be probably one.
I think it's going to work out just fine. I think you'll do okay.
I'm 50-50 on them. I don't know.
I don't know, man. I got to tell you, I would say take the 50, take the under, man. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, I also got 2 kids, right? So I got a 21 who's graduating in the next May. I was I only paid for 4 years for my kids. So they had 4 years to get it done. If they didn't, they're on their own. So both of them are surprisingly going to graduate on time. Imagine that. So my oldest son is.
Would you have actually said, nope, screw you, you're on your own? Yeah. It's easy to say.
No, it's the gift of having education, and I'm happy to invest in it. But like that investment has a timeline. So
that's it. Yeah. How long you pay for the car?
So I think my one son, is in the real estate business. I think he's looking to get into the trade, so he's working on that path, which was exciting when he told me that about 6 months ago. And then my youngest son is going to graduate. Those guys need to go work for someone else, but someday, maybe in 5 years, we'll work together again. I like this idea about family enterprise and long-term value. So I think that's the kind of stuff that matters.
Very cool.
I love it. Okay, let's do one more question. We'll let Jamie have the rest of hhis afternoon here. All right, Marissa, go ahead.
So Jamie, what's your favorite tool?
Favorite tool? So I have 2. So when it's landscaping, I like a hedge pruner, a steel hedge pruner. Like it,
nice.
It's like the best. I like shaping bushes.
The old-fashioned,
like my most fascinating thing ever. It's hedging is my.
What kind of shapes? What's your favorite?
I like this. So I've created this sort of wall of bushes, but it's almost curved. So it's pretty fun. I don't get to do it all that time, but I do like this curved thing I made. So that would be the other one is I think just a good old Milwaukee power tool, right? With the quick chuck that snaps in, snaps out. Like that would be my 2 things. I think you could fix a lot of shit with those.
There
things.
you go.
They need a holster. I want a holster for mine. All right.
Do you cut your grass? Do you like cutting grass?
I do. Yeah. I'll just say this. I don't cut my grass in every place that I'm at. But we have a place in up Canada, and I always know cutting the grass and all that. So I do like yard work. It's fun, but I also enjoy the fact that there are other people who like to do it as well. So I like to pass that.
You don't want to rob other people of their dreams while you're
right. I mean, I want everybody to have an opportunity. I mean, why would I want to
really like it? Yeah. Look at that guy. He's just having a blast.
Yeah, it's like Tom Sawyer, right? The guy was really good at painting the fence, but he's even better at convincing others they wanted to paint the fence. So there you go.
Yeah. All right, Jim.
So my question's a little bit different, and I'm gonna strain your memory a little bit because we're gonna go back to the first part of this call. And I want to see if you caught what I caught when Troy was talking about how people think owners all get rich. And Troy said, I mean, I'm not very rich. He said very rich. So he didn't say I'm not rich. He said I'm not very rich, which I don't know. I caught that. I was just wondering if maybe you did too, Jamie.
Oh,
well,
Jim,
I think the thing about
I'm extremely rich. I'm just kidding.
I think about the thing about the very rich and very not. What I know is the more you make, there seems to always be somebody who has more, but there's always a lot of people who have less too. So maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
There you go.
I want to be adequately rich. That's it. I don't know.
There you go.
Like,
so I think maybe the term is.
I love the.
Go ahead.
I love how you let other people mow your lawn because you don't want to rob them of their dream.
Got a
You are
great
such
job,
a
man.
giver.
We
You're a
have
giver.
great careers in America. The other thing I would say to you though is maybe the thing is to have enough to be free to choose. So my wife used to ask me all the time, like, when's enough enough? And I said, when I have the freedom of choice. So if I choose to cut
There you
my
go.
grass, I can cut my grass. If I
There you
choose
go.
to go on vacation, that would be great. But I think that's maybe the measure of if you have wealth or not is, can you have the freedom of choice? I think that's really what's more exciting.
You know, the old saying, if you have a round bush, you're just like everybody else, but if you have an oval one, why don't you work on
There
that?
you go.
You ever
It's
thought
true.
about
Yeah.
oval?
It's true. I mean,
Oval
do you have a better
hedges?
shape than oval? Maybe, do we have I'm not a mathematician sort of geometry guy, but I'd love sort of some unique shape. Maybe you could text me later and tell me what that unique shape
Well, you
might
could
look
literally say, I'm the only guy that has this. That's the dream.
There you go.
like.
All right. So
There
one
you go.
last thing. So what would you, so if you could spread the word to the young boys and girls out there thinking
Yes.
about, hey, what do I want to do? I'm in 11th grade today. What advice would you give?
It's a great question. The advice I would say is not about this. I'll give you the antithesis and then I'll give you the answer. The advice is, I wouldn't say follow your dreams. I would say follow your passion. And I would say if that passion means that you get to go work in the trades, then you're really lucky. But you need to find contextually some sort of thing that you want to do with your life where you want to get up every day, hit it really hard, and you enjoy it. I think people need to look long and hard and realize that college is not for everybody. It's probably for a real small percentage. And just, you got to be quiet enough to hear what your body's trying to tell you what you want to do. Not a great answer, but simple.
No, it's a great answer. It's true.
The hardest part of that answer when you talk to is they just don't know, right? Because they just haven't been exposed to that many things like we probably were, right? Where you're just like, go outside and come back when it gets dark. And you're kind of forced to live in a world of which the kids aren't into that, right? So sometimes they just don't know, which is really the challenge, I think.
I think, one of the things I wish, when you asked about like, what did I do when I had that time off and I took care of my dad? I mean, one of the things in the last couple of years specifically I've been thinking about is, why am I in such a hurry to go back and do what I did for 25 years? Right? Why
It's
don't
funny.
like,
Yeah.
it's interesting, right? Like you can literally go do, the world's a really big place and there's a lot of really cool stuff to do, right? Like learn an instrument, right? Get a pilot's license, get a boat license, go learn a foreign language, go in bed with a family in Central America, do a service project in Kathmandu, go climb Mount Everest, whatever. There's 1,000 things in the world you can go do, right? So why is it that people tend to have success and then they boomerang right back to where they were? So part of the thing, this challenge that I put to myself was, can I have the grit and the patience and the fortitude to not run back to exactly what I know right out of the gate? I mean, I think you always have some foot in the trades for sure, but like, what about doing things that, I'm 52, I'm not going to live forever. Like, why not try some stuff you've never done before and get freaky with it? You know what I mean? Like, try different stuff. Like, don't get sucked into like running right back to doing the daily call board and like a 9 a.m. huddle. And let's do a leadership meeting at Thursday at 10 and talk about our crisis and problems. Like, I don't know. Think about it.
Yeah. Well, what's that fisherman story, right? So I'll screw it up, but the entrepreneur guy comes and meets this guy, the story, right? Where he's goes out all day and he's like, builds a dream, but, ultimately, comes back to I just want to be a fisherman and spend time with my family. Right.
That's right. Well, I think one of the things too, I tell you, is that, we have this foundation, we donate anonymously. We donated anonymously over 7 figures in the last 4 years. Okay. And there are projects like building a preschool, buying a fire truck for a community that doesn't have one. But the coolest ones that we've done are we find individuals, unbeknownst to them, that are sort of needy cases that really fall into like what I'll say below the radar of like a nonprofit, but above what I'll call, social service stuff, right? And we've done that twice, and one, it was hugely successful. That was really fun, right? Is doing something out of the box, right? But one was an epic failure. So the learning I have from it is that maybe we just do traditional shit for a while, because the one that was an epic failure was not good. So anyway, that's total random thought. Didn't come from anywhere. Sorry.
No, but it's true, because because that's all of a sudden that your worst the worst fears happen, right? Because even though that if you did two things and are both in your comfort zone, but one failed, you wouldn't stop doing it.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So,
yeah. I mean, I think your question, like, I think for you guys do a great job podcast wise. Keep doing it. Keep rocking it. I mean, keep asking good questions. Be curious. I think the trades are an incredible vehicle to change the world. And I think some people are starting to see it now. 10 years from now, maybe we should have the same conversation and see where we are.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. Because I don't think AI is going to take over the world. Right. I mean, I think we're in a moment where it's a moment of like, holy shit, lots of stuff's changing, but I don't feel like it's changed all that much yet.
Not yet. It really hasn't. I think you were ahead of your time. I think the companies that are going to be the haves and the have-nots are the ones that are forward-thinking enough to build their own apprenticeship programs, build their own training centers to develop their people, regardless of what business they're in, right? So they don't have to be just an HVAC company. Develop your own team, right? To build that bench, and because there's tons of you see on the news all day long that there's 5 million jobs out there, and there's 6 million people looking for work. And yet there's still a trades gap, or there's still a gap. And you know why?
Yep.
Because they're not qualified, right? And so people don't want to just hire a body to hire a body. They need someone who actually knows what they're doing and is willing to work hard to do it and to learn something and to
That's right.
have a little drive and motivation, right? So companies that make those kinds of opportunities in their area, partnering with high schools, partnering with schools, working with different things to develop more talent for themselves, I think that's going to be the ones that stand out, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, at the end of the day, people should look in the mirror and ask if they want to work for them, right? I mean, my aha was that I didn't want to work for me. Well, then why would anybody else? And I think the same thing with guys that are looking for jobs. Like, hey, man, like, are you even hireable? There's this real lack of, to your point, there's a real lack of humility when people they don't stop long enough to think about, hey man, am I really the right person for the situation? Am I doing everything I should be doing? Am I showing up in the best possible light I can possibly be to be successful? And the answer usually is no. And then they get upset about, well, why is that? Well, don't ask me, man. I'm not trying to fix your life. You need to fix that shit. Right? It's not hard.
Responsibility is the key. Yeah. People want it to just be because they exist. And that's just not, never was, never will be.
Well, it's like your sales call, right? Like, we want everybody that's going to buy the best, like in a 15-minute conversation. Well, that would be awesome, but that's just not reality we're in.
Yeah.
Right.
If they were, then we wouldn't need you. Right. So,
well, that's right. That's right. So,
all right. Well, thank you very much, Jamie. It was a real pleasure, and we can't thank you enough for joining our show. And it was a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you back and just keep in touch. And if there's anything that we can do to help, let's you can count on us. So
yeah, for sure. If there's
really appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. If I can be helpful for you, let me know. Have a great day. Enjoy the week.
All right, you too. All right.
Thanks.